Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
I always say I love digging into these companies and their stories, but this one today is particularly interesting because we've invested a good chunk of your savings into it. We're talking about Spectra7.
Ah, yes, Spectra7.
Exactly, and their potential in the world of data centers,
Yeah.
especially with their new CEO, Omar Javaid, at the helm.
It's a fascinating situation for sure. Javaid has a really unique background, actually. He started in chemistry.
Chemistry.
Yeah, chemistry. Before pivoting to tech, he's held some pretty impressive positions at big-name companies, too, like Qualcomm, Motorola, even Vonage.
Wow, so a chemist turned tech CEO.
Yeah.
That's not something you see every day. And what has you particularly curious is how his background might actually influence Spectra7's future.
Right, exactly. Especially since this is his first time as a CEO.
First-time CEO leading a company in a rapidly evolving industry, like data centers.
It's a big challenge for sure. And when we look at the current landscape of the data center market, it gets even more interesting. Well, NVIDIA, the big player in AI and graphics processing, is really pushing for faster connectivity, for their AI initiatives. Specifically, they're aiming for 800G and 400G speeds.
Those are some serious speeds. And what does that have to do with Spectra7?
Well, this is where active copper cables, or ACCs, come in. Spectra7 specializes in this technology, and it's kind of crucial for achieving those high speeds.
ACC's got it.
Ah.
Okay, now I know ACCs are important for data centers, but for those of us who aren't, electrical engineers, could you break it down a bit? What are they and why are they so important in this whole data center evolution?
Sure. Think of ACCs like the superhighways of data centers. They're the cables that transmit data over short to medium distances.
Okay, I'm with you.
But the key here is that they do this with really low power consumption. And that's absolutely crucial for all those power-hungry applications like AI, which, as you know, are driving a lot of data center growth these days.
So they're essential for keeping things running smoothly and efficiently.
Absolutely. Now, traditionally, data centers have relied on optical solutions for this kind of high-speed data transfer.
Right, fiber optic cables and all that.
Exactly. But those can be pretty expensive and they consume a lot of energy. What Spectra7 is offering is a cost-effective and energy-efficient alternative.
So they're hitting those crucial points. Cost effectiveness, energy efficiency, and of course performance.
Yeah.
It sounds like a winning formula.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's so great, is there a catch? Why haven't they achieved widespread adoption yet?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? While Spectra7's technology holds a lot of promise, they haven't really reached that large-scale commercial adoption yet.
Interesting. So how does Javaid fit into all of this?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. His leadership could be both a huge asset and a potential hurdle.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, on one hand, he's got this proven track record of scaling tech companies and building strategic partnerships. Think about his time at Nexmo, for example.
Right, the cloud communications company.
Exactly. His experience there could be absolutely crucial for Spectra7 if he can secure deals with major data center players like NVIDIA or even cloud providers like AWS.
Yeah, that could be a game changer.
Absolutely. It could really propel them forward. But on the other hand, this is his very first CEO role.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. So there's a lot riding on this.
There is. There are so many aspects beyond product development that he'll have to navigate now. Things like financial management operations, stakeholder communication. It's a whole different level of responsibility.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I know you did a bit of digging into his leadership style, and you found out he's an avid reader with some pretty interesting books on his list.
Oh, yeah. He's got some thought-provoking titles in there for sure.
I'm talking about Fooled by Randomness, Anti-Fragile, and Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. I mean, what do these choices tell us about how he might approach this challenge at Spectra7?
Those book choices are pretty insightful. They actually paint a picture of Javaid as a strategic thinker. Someone who understands the importance of navigating unpredictable markets like the tech world.
Right. It's constantly changing.
Exactly. Take Fooled by Randomness, for instance. That suggests to me that he recognizes the role of chance and luck in success.
So he's not naive.
No, but he also doesn't solely rely on it. Anti-fragile, on the other hand, hints at a desire to build resilience.
Which is essential in any industry, really. But especially tech.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constantly evolving landscape. You need to be able to adapt and bounce back from setbacks.
So we're looking at a CEO who not only understands tech, but also gets market dynamics and long-term strategy.
Exactly. It seems he's preparing Spectra7 not just to survive, but to thrive in a world that's always throwing curveballs.
That's a great way to put it. And this brings to mind his experience at Motorola. during their decline and eventual revival after embracing Android.
Ah, yes, Motorola.
He was there during that turbulent period.
He was. And that experience could be very relevant to Spectra7's current position.
How so?
Well, think about it. Motorola's story is a lot like Kodak's failure to adapt to digital cameras.
Right. They held on to their old film technology for too long.
Exactly. And it ultimately led to their downfall. Both companies highlight the danger of clinging to outdated models when the market shifts.
It's a classic tale of disruption.
It is. And Javaid was there during Motorola's pivot to Android. So he's seen firsthand how crucial it is to adapt and innovate to stay ahead of the curve.
So what you're saying is that Spectra7 might be facing a similar crossroads in the evolving data center market.
Yeah.
And Javaid's experience could be invaluable in navigating that.
That's precisely what we need to analyze. Are there signs that the data center market is on the verge of a major disruption?
And if so, is Spectra7 positioned to ride that wave or get swept away by it?
Exactly. It's a question worth exploring.
Absolutely. We'll have to dive into that. What other industries are seeing disruptions that might parallel the data center market? And how might those examples provide insights for Spectra7's potential trajectory under Javaid's leadership?
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely tackle.
Right.
Let's see. Well, the smartphone market is a great example. We're seeing a big shift towards integrating AI into smartphones.
Right. Making them more powerful and intuitive.
Exactly. And that requires a lot more processing power, more sophisticated chipsets, companies that don't innovate in that area.
They risk falling behind.
Exactly. They could become obsolete. And then there's the automotive industry.
Oh, yeah. Electric vehicles, self-driving cars, all that.
Precisely. The transition to electric vehicles, micromobility solutions, and self-driving technology, it's really disrupting traditional car manufacturing and design.
It's a whole new world for the automotive industry.
It is. And companies like Tesla, they're thriving because they anticipated these shifts, while others are struggling to keep up.
So it's all about anticipating those shifts and adapting quickly. Like we were saying about Spectra7, are there any specific lessons from those industries that Javaid could apply to Spectra7's strategy?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of embracing change, not being afraid to challenge the way things have always been done.
Don't be afraid to shake things up a bit.
Exactly. Companies that cling to outdated technologies and business models, they're often the ones that get left behind.
They become dinosaurs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Javaid's willingness to embrace new ideas, his reading lists suggest that he understands this.
Right. He's not stuck in the past.
No, he's looking ahead. Speaking of Spectra7's technology, we've talked about ACCs in a general sense.
Right. The superhighways of data centers.
Exactly. But how does Spectra7's technology specifically compare to its competitors, like MACOM and Semtech?
Mm-hmm.
What are their unique selling points?
Yeah. What makes them stand out?
Well, Spectra7 has a few key advantages. First, they have this patented technology called gauge changer.
Gauge changer. Oh,
Yeah. It allows for faster data transfer speeds over longer distances compared to traditional copper cables.
So they're pushing the limits of what copper can do.
Exactly. This gives them a real edge in performance, particularly for those 800G and 400G speeds that NVIDIA is so focused on.
So they're not just meeting the current demand, they're anticipating future needs as well.
Exactly. They're staying ahead of the curve. Second, Spectra7 is really focused on environmentally friendly solutions.
Oh, that's important these days.
It is. Their cables use less copper and consume less power compared to the traditional options.
Which is a big plus for data centers trying to reduce their carbon footprint.
Absolutely. It's becoming increasingly important for data centers to be sustainable.
So they're appealing to both performance and sustainability, which are becoming essential factors in data center infrastructure.
Precisely. And finally, Spectra7 offers a more cost-effective solution compared to optical cables.
Right, which are often seen as the premium option.
Exactly. But they can be very expensive. Spectra7's ACCs provide a compelling alternative for data centers looking to balance performance and budget.
It sounds like they've positioned themselves strategically in the market.
They have, but as we mentioned earlier, that large-scale commercial adoption hasn't happened yet.
Right, so what could be holding them back?
That's the big question, isn't it? One possibility is that the industry might be a bit hesitant to fully embrace a newer technology like ACCs.
Because optical solutions have been the standard for so long.
Exactly. There's always a certain amount of inertia when it comes to adopting new technologies, even when those new technologies offer significant advantages.
It's like the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right. But sometimes you need to break things to make progress. Do you think that's the case here?
It's possible. I mean, data centers are complex systems.
They are, and there's a lot of risk involved in changing core components.
Things could go wrong.
They could, Javaid needs to convince the industry that Spectra7's technology isn't just a viable alternative, but a superior solution.
Right. It's not just about having great technology. It's about building trust and demonstrating that value proposition.
Exactly. And that's where Javaid's experience in building those strategic partnerships could be so crucial.
Right. He needs to get those big players on board.
Exactly. If he can secure some early adopters, maybe smaller data center providers, willing to take a chance on new technology.
Kind of like a pilot program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That could create a ripple effect and encourage wider adoption.
So it's about building momentum, demonstrating success on a smaller scale, and then using that to attract those larger players.
Precisely. It's like building a snowball. You start small, but as it rolls downhill, it gathers size and momentum.
I like that analogy. Now let's go back to those thought-provoking books Javaid enjoys. You mentioned Anti-Fragile and how it suggests he aims for resilience. How could that concept translate into concrete strategies for Spectra7? What kind of approach might we see him implement?
Well, Anti-Fragile is all about not just withstanding shocks, but actually benefiting from them.
Turning those challenges into opportunities.
Exactly. In a business context, this could mean creating systems that are adaptable and flexible, able to evolve in response to unexpected events.
So it's not just about planning for every contingency. It's about building a company that can thrive in uncertainty.
Precisely. How would that apply to Spectra7? Well, it could mean diversifying their product portfolio.
Not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Or exploring new markets, or even being open to partnerships and collaborations that might seem unconventional at first.
Thinking outside the box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the unknown and seeing volatility not as a threat, but as an opportunity.
So rather than trying to predict the future, he's preparing Spectra7 to adapt to whatever the future throws their way.
That's a great way to put it. And that's a powerful approach in today's world. It's not about having all the answers.
It's about being able to learn and adapt.
Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about the potential upside of Javaid's leadership.
Right. His experience, his vision.
But let's flip the coin for a moment. What are some potential downsides or challenges he might face as a first-time CEO?
Yeah, that's an important point to consider.
It is. While his experience is valuable, he's stepping into a role with a much broader scope of responsibilities.
Right. He's not just focused on product development anymore.
Exactly. He'll need to navigate financial management, investor relations, operational oversight.
Areas where he might not have as much direct experience.
Exactly. There's going to be a learning curve.
And there's always the risk that his focus on long-term strategy and resilience might clash with the short-term demands of the market.
That's a good point. Investors often want to see immediate returns.
They're looking for quick profits.
Right. And that pressure could create some tension if Spectra7 doesn't meet those expectations right away.
So it's about balancing his vision with the realities of the market and the expectations of those investors.
It is. It's a delicate dance, and it's one of the key challenges any CEO faces, especially in tech.
Especially in an industry that moves so fast.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the competitive landscape in the data center market.
Okay, so we've mentioned Maycom and Semtech.
Yeah.
But what other players should we be aware of?
Well, you've got the established giants like Intel and Broadcom.
Right, big names in tech.
They have a significant presence in the data center space. And then you have the cloud providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud.
The big cloud players.
Exactly. And they're increasingly building their own custom hardware and software solutions for their data centers.
So it's a mix of those traditional hardware providers and the emerging power of the cloud giants.
It is. How does Spectra7 fit into this ecosystem? That's a crucial question that Javaid needs to answer.
Yeah. Where do they see themselves in this landscape?
Will they position themselves as a partner to the cloud providers, supplying them with specialized hardware components?
Or will they try to compete directly?
Yeah.
Offering a complete data center solution.
It's a big decision, and it kind of feels like a David versus Goliath scenario.
Right, taking on those tech giants.
Exactly. Spectra7 is a relatively small player compared to those giants, but they have the potential to disrupt the market with their innovative technology.
So it's a story of innovation, disruption, and a battle for dominance in the rapidly evolving world of data centers.
Precisely. And it's a story that's just beginning to unfold.
Now, as an investor in Spectra7, you're undoubtedly keen to see how Javaid's leadership will play out. What are some key indicators to watch for, particularly in those first few quarters as CEO?
That's a great question. First, keep an eye on their partnerships.
Partnerships with those big players we were talking about.
Exactly. Announcements of collaborations with major data center players or cloud providers.
Those would be good signs.
It would be a strong signal that Javaid is successfully executing his strategy.
So it's about seeing those partnerships translate into concrete business wins.
Exactly. Second, pay attention to their product development roadmap.
Are they continuing to innovate?
Are they developing new technologies that address emerging needs and challenges in the data center space?
So it's about ensuring they're not just keeping pace, but actually leading the pack.
Precisely. And finally, observe their commitment to sustainability and ethical practices.
Right. Those are important factors, too.
They are. Are they taking steps to minimize their environmental impact? Are they transparent about their supply chain and labor practices?
So it's about looking beyond the bottom line.
It is. These factors will ultimately determine whether Spectra7 is not just a successful company, but a responsible one.
A company that's worth investing in for the long haul.
Exactly.
This has been incredibly insightful. I'm sure our listener is already gleaning some valuable information for their investment decisions.
I hope so. There's still much to learn as Javaid settles into his role, but the early signs are certainly intriguing.
It's a story worth following closely.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
A question to ponder.
We've talked about the competitive landscape, the potential for disruption, and the importance of adaptability.
Right. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But what about the ethical implications of this rapidly evolving technological landscape?
Ah, that's a great point.
How should companies like Spectra7 balance their pursuit of innovation and profit with their responsibility to society and the environment?
It's a really important question that I think sometimes gets lost in all the excitement about, new technology and advancements.
Yeah, it's easy to get swept up in that race to be faster, more efficient, more profitable.
Right. But we have to ask ourselves, at what cost?
Exactly. What are the trade-offs?
Well, in the case of data centers, the environmental impact is a huge concern.
Right. They use a ton of energy.
They do. They consume massive amounts of energy, which of course contributes to carbon emissions.
It's a significant environmental footprint.
It is. And while Spectra7's focus on energy-efficient solutions is a step in the right direction, it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right. It's not a silver bullet.
No, it's not. So it's not just about the technology itself, but how it's used and the broader impact it has.
The big picture.
Exactly. Companies need to consider the entire life cycle of their products, from manufacturing and distribution to usage and even disposal.
Cradle to grave.
Exactly. And they need to be mindful of their supply chains, too, making sure they're sourcing materials ethically and using responsible labor practices.
So it's about taking a holistic approach.
It is, and it goes beyond just the environmental impact, too. There are concerns about data privacy and security.
Right, protecting sensitive information.
Exactly. And there's also the potential for AI and other technologies to be used in ways that could be harmful or discriminatory.
Those are serious ethical considerations.
They are. As these technologies become more powerful and more widespread, it's crucial that we have conversations about ethics regulations and safeguards.
To make sure they're used responsibly.
Exactly. For the benefit of society as a whole.
So it's a shared responsibility.
It is. Companies need to prioritize these ethical considerations. But consumers and policymakers have a role to play, too.
We all need to be part of the conversation.
Absolutely. We need to work together to shape the future of technology in a way that benefits everyone.
Couldn't agree more. Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into Spectra7, let's bring it back to you, our listener.
And your investment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've explored the potential upsides and downsides, the competitive landscape, and even touched on these important ethical considerations.
Right. So with all of this in mind,
Knowing what we know now,
what should you be watching for as an investor, to really gauge Spectra7's long-term success?
what are the key indicators?
Okay, well, first I'd say look for tangible signs of Javaid's strategic execution. Watch for those partnerships with key players in the data center market, especially the cloud providers.
So those big names we talked about.
Exactly. If they start announcing major deals, that's a strong signal that he's gaining traction.
So it's not just about talk, it's about action.
Precisely. Second, pay close attention to their product roadmap. Are they staying ahead of the innovation curve? Are they developing new technologies that meet those emerging needs and challenges in the data center space?
So it's about making sure they're not just keeping pace, but actually leading the way.
Exactly. And finally, observe their commitment to sustainability and ethical practices. Are they actually taking steps to minimize their environmental impact? Are they transparent about their supply chain and their labor practices?
So it's about looking beyond just the financial reports.
It is about considering those broader impacts.
Right, because ultimately, Those things will determine whether Spectra7 is not just a successful company, but a responsible one.
Exactly. And a company that's worth investing in for the long haul.
This is a great point to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. But it's really just the beginning of the story for Spectra7.
Right. It'll be fascinating to see how things unfold under Javaid's leadership.
Absolutely. It's a story with a lot of potential. And it'll be intriguing to see if they can really live up to the hype and become a true disruptor in the data center market.
To our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights to help you make those informed investment decisions.
Keep learning. Keep asking those tough questions.
And remember, the most successful investors are the ones who stay curious and informed.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
See you then.